Welcome back to Naval News with Subbrief. Today we're going to talk about what the U.S. Navy is doing around the globe, from the relief that's going on with Jamaica to the operation that's happening in the South China Sea. I think you'll find today's briefing very informative. And I want to give credit first, though, to the United States Naval Institute, who produces this great fleet traffic graphic every week. I think it's very valuable. It's a good way to summarize all the things we're going to talk about today. So let's begin in the Caribbean down here around Jamaica. Jamaica got absolutely hammered by Hurricane Melissa. And so the Iwo Jima ARG is down there in the Caribbean conducting operations off the coast of Venezuela. While continuing those operations, she transited a little bit north to give support to Jamaica, moving in 40 service members with supplies in just what is an initial effort to provide some immediate life-saving and humanitarian support to the island and all the people that have been ravaged over there. So our heart goes out to them. We're physically there supporting them, helping them recover from that natural disaster. Here's just one of many photos that are available online of what the western half of Haiti looks like. That's where the eye of the hurricane actually ripped over the island. It was a Category 5 maximum category, and it was 180-mile-an-hour winds at the time of landfall. So it was a very strong Category 5, and the winds at time of landfall were the strongest recorded in history for a landfall hurricane. So it was a significant event. This thing came ashore like a blender and chopped everything up. As you can see, there's power lines down as you would expect. Roofs were ripped off. People's lives are disrupted. They're just trying to recover from that and get back together. And they're very strong people down there, strong-willed, and they have our support. There's lots of other Red Cross and first aid type agencies helping them out from around the world. So everyone's kind of coming together in that region. And it's always nice to see that the U.S. military also plays a significant role in that. Doesn't always get credited. This is not something you see on the news very often, but when it happens, I like to highlight it here because you may not see it anywhere else. For example, we often do operations in the South Pacific, like you see here. This is an example of the people of Samoa receiving some medical screenings and eye exams, and some of the cool technology that we have in the military now to help our sailors and Marines. We bring ashore, and with extra glasses, for example, in this case, like this device here, can take a picture of a person's eyes and get their prescription right from that, so they can turn around, pick the prescription out of the lenses they have available, and offer them to the people. This is just something that goes on, never gets reported on. We get no credit for it, and we don't necessarily ask credit for it. It's just something the Navy and the other services do, provide services like this to people around the world, in addition to the military mission we have. So good job, Navy, doing that. So let's get to the Mediterranean, where the Gerald R Ford is moving towards the Atlantic. She's still not in the Atlantic at the time of this recording, but she may be by the time you see this. She's expected to report to the theater of the Caribbean Sea to assist the Iwo Jima in operations down there off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia now. They're expanding that operation a little bit. So the Carrier Strike Group 12 is the one that operates out of Norfolk, and this is the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, our newest aircraft carrier, our largest, and is an absolute masterpiece of technology, power, and size. With her email style catapult system, she can keep many aircraft in the air at once because it launches more aircraft per minute than the old steam catapult does. The 4 Burke class destroyers that are escorting her are among the most powerful surface combatants in the world. She's very well defended and bringing a lot of fight to the theater here. There's hundreds of missiles involved between the airplanes and the ships. This is a massive amount of firepower moving into the Caribbean. I have no prediction on what's going to happen when she gets there, but this is a significant, almost to the point of ridiculous escalation for that theater of war that we're going against, the drug runners out of Colombia now and Venezuela. It'll be interesting to see what the Pentagon does with this level of firepower, because it is absolute overmatch for anything in that theater. Moving on to the Nimitz. The Nimitz had a lot of drama recently because they lost 2 aircraft on the same day within even 30 minutes of each other. And while that investigation continues, she is staying in the South China Sea, as you see here on the graphic, doing things like, refueling and standard routine operations. They would, of course, remain in theater there until they come up with a plan and units on site to recover those 2 airframes off the bottom. I believe that's being planned and being executed now. Who knows how long that will take? It could take months, but they certainly aren't going to leave the planes there on the bottom. And so the USS Nimitz definitely had a problem with, we think, their fuel, because both the helicopter and the F-18 went down at the same time, essentially. So it links to a common cause there. And so while that's still not definitive, there's going to be a report, and it's probably going to take months, next year sometime. And when it comes out, we'll see what the report says. But a lot of the experts agree that it's the fuel, and it just makes sense that that would be a common cause between a helicopter like this and the F-18. But there's a lot of other things happening in this small body of water at the same time as the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group sails around, conducting its operations. China is also operating in the South China Sea, harassing other vessels, like you see here in the picture above me, where they're harassing a Philippine supply ship that's going to one of the military atolls that they have out there. This has been routine for them for years. They're always coming up alongside, ramming these ships, shooting the high power fire hoses into the ships, trying to push them away. And if you get hit by one of these, it could easily knock a crew member overboard into the water, no problem. The 3 ships you see on the right-hand side of your screen over there have just transited from the Yellow Sea into the Western Pacific, south of Japan, east of Taiwan. They're operating these ships in that area right there, just having a presence encircling Taiwan's island, again, with military units. Again, nothing new there. That's a routine patrol for them at this point, but they're demonstrating their ability to operate for duration, a long time, many days, over a week, outside the first island chain. China has that ability now, and they exercise it frequently. Also, in the South China Sea, south of where those 3 ships are operating, we had a close abort situation happen between the Australian crew of a P-8A Poseidon. This is an anti-submarine or a sub-hunter aircraft, as well as a surveillance aircraft. Came across an Su-35 of the PLAAF, which is the Chinese Air Force. And of course, instead of maintaining safe distance and radio communications, what happens? The Chinese airplane gets aggressive, flies dangerously close and fast to the P-8 several times, and on at least one occasion dropped a series of flares in their path, causing the plane to make a choice of either get out of the way or risk ingesting those flares into the engines, potentially damaging the aircraft itself. Now, there's no details on how that series ended, but the fact is there is clearly an aggressor here if you look at the history and even look at what's happening right now between the ships being rammed by the Chinese ships and the planes flying close to other planes in an unsafe manner, and including releasing debris in the form of flare and chaff to try and disrupt the plane's operations. It's completely unnecessary, but it's not new. And I believe that's what China's trying to do, is to make this action justifiable and routine, because it's always been that way. And it, frankly, at this point, it's been that way for so long. We should not continue to accept it. They're going to continue to do this, push the boundaries, and even escalate if they aren't stopped. China appears to be looking for, where is the red line? When is somebody going to push back on us? And while we do it diplomatically, it doesn't change the behavior in real world in situations like this. So I would be interested to know in what you guys think the forces should do, like America, Philippines, Australia. What can they do safely, and what should they do to say no more of this type of behavior? Please put that in the chat. That'll be interesting to read. And so why is the Nimitz in the South China Sea in the first place, besides she's on her way home to Washington eventually? Well, there is a big annual conference in Malaysia. This is the Asian conference. And Secretary of War Hegseth is there in Malaysia meeting with Chinese military leaders. This is a huge moment for our two countries to come together and talk about events that are happening in and around Taiwan and the Philippines and the South China Sea. All these aggressive actions were confronted and brought forth to the table by the United States this week. So good job, United States, for at least bringing it up, asking them to stop and be peaceful. The position of the United States, according to Secretary Hegseth, is to maintain the balance of power in the region. No more escalation. No one needs to, stop, or reduce forces. If we just keep the forces the way they are now and just operate safely instead of aggressively, that this would be good for everybody. That's kind of our position right now. China, on their side of the table, is saying that they want a peaceful reunification of Taiwan with China. They want to reunify the country and not do it through war, implying that war is an option. And that's their position. And that's where we sit right now. Those two sides came away from the table. Hegseth met with the press and said that there was things that we disagreed on and things that we agreed on. And probably the two things that I just brought to you is that we want the status quo. It's always been our policy. And China wants Taiwan. It's always been their policy. So nothing's really changed. But there was one announcement that came after this meeting. Secretary Hegseth said that we're setting up something called Task Force Philippines. And so I looked into this. Task Force Philippines is a force of 60 personnel that will be led by a one-star general. And there's no new forces involved in this. These are forces in the Philippines already. They're just given a new command structure now under this one-star. And they're not adding any new people to the island. This also is not going to be a group of soldiers that are going to operate in an additional offensive manner. It's a capability that they already have. They're just giving them a new structure. And the forces are not permanent. This is not a permanently stationed force in the Philippines. So essentially, they're setting up a new command, a new structure to liaison with Philippine military. Probably other militaries in the region as well, but certainly the Philippines. That's the primary focus. And so that's going to be a new command in that area that Marines and maybe some other personnel can take part in. It's very small. It doesn't have anything additional to it. It's just another tool in our toolbox to work closely with our allies over there, specifically the Philippines. All right. And that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a great one.